everyone. Realize I did not put my name up there on the first slide, but I'm Aubrey Calaway. I'm a junior here at Brown. So my original question for this research was as follows. Based on inundation data from Hurricane Harvey and FEMA, which of the major development projects in Houston are at risk of future flooding, especially given the increasing impacts of climate change? In order to answer this question, I originally was going to use some pretty basic GIS analytical techniques. I mapped about 30 major development projects, including parks, plazas, towers, hotels, a few which are seen here in the purple. I then compared them to flood data from Harvey and more general FEMA floodplain data. What became apparent during this process, however, were a few problems and assumptions in my original methodology. I was aware that FEMA floodplain data was out of date. The ones used to determine national flood insurance requirements and rates were just, pretty out of date. NOAA's 2017 analysis of Harvey confirmed what many local residents had known for a while, that FEMA's data was highly inaccurate given the local context. Specifically, its definition of a 100-year storm was 3 to 5 inches lower than what it actually should be in the Houston area. Even this, however, is likely a conservative estimate. As I overlaid FEMA data with a map of Houston, my hometown, I could see the deficiency. This entire swath of the city, which includes almost all of downtown, was considered an area of minimal hazard. Only a tiny sliver that runs along that curved bayou was identified at any risk at all. I knew from personal experience that that wasn't true. Even non-government data was unreliable. This raster data set, published by the UC Davis Center for Watershed Sciences on arcgis.com, was the only one that I could find that comprehensively mapped where there had been flooding and where there had not been flooding in Houston during Hurricane Harvey. It turned out to be next to useless. Places I knew personally that had flooded, like the Alley Theater, shown here, looked like they were completely dry on the map. I hoped that some crowdsourcing websites that collected data from everyday people during Harvey might be a solution, but I encountered broken links and defunct websites. Then I began to ask myself, what was I actually looking for? What did I want this data to tell me, and was even the most perfect data set really capable of giving me those answers? Really, my questions were about a more deeply psychological and social set of processes, like digestion of scary information, political and corporate manipulation of fact and perception of risk, and the production and communication of imaginaries of the past, present, and future. So maybe this is a more appropriate title for this flash talk. The question that I'm really asking goes a little bit more like this. As we move into a world that threatens to burn, flood, quake, and suffocate us with increasing severity and frequency, how are we taking into account what we experienced yesterday to predict tomorrow? For those of us who are deeply concerned that we're not taking enough action on climate change, which I assume is most people in this room, the question changes a bit. What kind of data is effective in forming imaginaries of the future that call people to action? As a more general conversation around climate change and disaster has demonstrated, even perfect data showing flood extent, depth, and frequency most likely would not do the trick, at least when presented with standard maps, diagrams, and tables. Clearly, maps like this one are not going to mobilize or really inform many people outside of conferences like this. And graphs like these don't seem to be doing the trick either. So having reframed my question, I started imagining ways to shape imaginaries with data. One starting place is clear, comprehensive, more accessible, and emotionally informed data visualization. Here we have a Google Earth Street View screenshot of the Alley Theater, the same building we mapped earlier. I mocked up a simulator that can toggle between today and different projections of the future. Here we have a day without a flood. Why don't we add a person for scale and emotional identification purposes? And here is an imagined depiction of future flooding events given our current emissions trajectory, using the actual color of floodwater during Harvey. And here we can see a more positive trajectory, one in which we've taken steps to reduce emissions, overhaul Houston city planning to introduce flood mitigating infrastructure, or any number of different steps. We know that doomsday data can have a crippling rather than productive effect. So we need to learn how to use data not only to warn and threaten, like here, but also inspire and motivate. Like I said earlier, I don't have the data to predict flooding in Houston, so the simulator is completely speculative. The point, however, is not accurate measurement of inundation levels. Rather, I want us to think how a simulator like this could help politicians, real estate developers, and everyday people really imagine what graphs like this means for them as individuals, as businesses, and as communities, and as a city. Thank you.